Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're tackling a topic that's, well, close to all of our hearts.
Literally.
We're talking about the heart-brain sleep connection.
Yeah, we've got some seriously cool research hot off the press from Nature that's going to totally change how we think about recovering from a heart attack.
Okay, so we all know that heart problems can really mess with your sleep.
Oh, for sure. Stress, anxiety, not exactly the best recipe for sweet dreams.
Right. But get this new research found that certain heart conditions can actually increase a specific type of deep sleep.
It's called slow wave sleep. And we're not just talking about mice here. This is in humans, too.
Wait, so you're saying a heart problem could lead to more sleep? That's kind of backwards, isn't it?
It does seem counterintuitive, right?
Right.
But our bodies are pretty amazing when it comes to healing. And this research really highlights how crucial sleep is for a heart to bounce back.
Okay, you got to spill the beans.
Mm-hmm.
What's the secret behind this sleep-heart connection? Well, it all starts with these little guys called monocytes. They're white blood cells that are basically our immune system's first responders.
Like they rush to the scene when there's trouble.
Exactly. Now, here's the kicker. After a heart attack, these monocytes don't just head to the heart. They make a beeline for the brain, too.
The brain, what are they doing up there?
Specifically, they gather in a part of the brain called the thalamus.
The thalamus, isn't that like the sensory relay station?
It is. But it also plays a role in sleep. And these monocytes, they cluster around this spot in the thalamus called the choroid plexus.
Okay, now I'm lost. What's the choroid plexus?
Think of it as the gateway between the blood and the fluid that bathes your brain and spinal cord.
So these monocytes are basically sneaking into the brain's control center.
You got it. And they do it fast.
Yeah.
We're talking within 24 hours of a heart attack. It's like they're on a mission.
A mission to do what exactly?
To deliver a special molecule called TNF.
TNF. Isn't that usually a bad guy when it comes to inflammation?
It can be.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. It's not like your whole body's producing more TNF. It's just these brain-bound monocytes that are making it locally.
So a targeted TNF delivery. Where's it going?
Straight to those brain cells in the thalamus, the neurons.
Hold up. Monocytes messing with brain cells. How does that work?
Well, these particular neurons, they use a neurotransmitter called glutamate. It's like the brain's go signal, keeping you alert and active.
Right, glutamate. I've heard of that.
So when TNF hits these neurons, it's like hitting the snooze button on that glutamate signal.
So the monocytes are basically telling these neurons to chill out, leading to more slow wave sleep.
You nailed it. And here's the truly amazing part. This increase in slow wave sleep seems to be directly linked to better heart recovery.
Hold on. More sleep helps the heart heal. How did they figure that out?
They did some studies in mice where they basically disrupted their sleep after a simulated heart attack, kind of waking them up, poor things.
That sounds rough. What happened?
Those sleep-deprived mice, their hearts just didn't recover as well. Weaker function, more inflammation, higher risk of some nasty complications.
So a good night's sleep is basically heart medicine.
It's looking that way. But there's more. They didn't stop with mice. They looked at humans, too.
Human patients who'd had heart attacks.
Yep. Acute coronary syndrome, they call it. Heart attacks, unstable angina, the serious stuff.
What did they find?
Those who had consistently lousy sleep in the weeks after their heart event, well, they were much more likely to have another heart attack, need another intervention, or even die within the next 2 years.
Wow. That's pretty powerful evidence that sleep is crucial for recovering from a heart attack.
No doubt about it. And they saw the same thing in the mice. Poor sleep meant less improvement in heart function over time.
This is all incredible. So we've got this sleep-heart connection, but what's the actual mechanism? How does sleep physically help the heart heal?
That's where things get even more interesting. And that's what we'll dive into right after we come back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were talking about how crucial sleep is for heart recovery.
Absolutely. Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah. If sleep is so important for helping a heart that's already been damaged heal, could it also play a role in preventing heart problems in the first place?
That's a great question. I mean, this study was all about recovery, but it definitely opens the door to thinking about sleep as a preventative measure, too.
Now that's an intriguing thought. Imagine your doctor prescribing a good night's sleep to protect your heart.
Wouldn't that be something? But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's get back to the research we were talking about.
Yeah, let's rewind a bit. How did those scientists even uncover this whole heart-brain sleep connection in the first place?
Well, they started by looking at brain cells in mice after a simulated heart attack. They used this really cool technique that let them see exactly which genes were turned on and off inside each cell.
Wow, so they could see how the brain was responding at a super detailed level.
Exactly. And because they knew the immune system is key in heart attack recovery, they decided to focus on the brain's own immune cells,
Which are?
microglia. Think of them as the brain's own security guards, always patrolling, making sure everything's in order.
So like the brain's first line of defense.
Exactly. And what they found was that after the heart attack, these microglia went into overdrive, started producing all these molecules that are involved in inflammation and attracting other immune cells to the area.
Like sending out an SOS.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And they thought maybe these signals are attracting those monocytes we were talking about, the ones that travel from the heart to the brain.
Okay, interesting theory. How did they test it?
They did something really clever. They took blood from mice who'd had a heart attack and injected it into healthy mice.
Whoa, like giving those healthy mice a dose of whatever was in the heart attack mice's blood.
Exactly. And you know what? The healthy mice started showing signs of microglial activation, just like the mice who actually had the heart attack.
So something in the blood of the heart attack mice was triggering this immune response in the brains of the healthy mice.
Right. It was like a chain reaction.
Mm.
They dug deeper and found that certain inflammatory molecules, like one called IL-1, were the likely culprits.
IL-1, what's that?
Think of it like a fire alarm going off. When there's damage or inflammation in the body, IL-1 gets released.
So in this case, the IL-1 from the damaged heart was traveling to the brain, setting off alarms and activating the microglia, and then the microglia called in the monocytes for backup.
Bingo. It's a perfect example of how interconnected our organs are. What happens in one part of the body can have ripple effects throughout the whole system.
Okay, so we've got these activated microglia sending out signals for help. But how do the monocytes actually get into the brain? Isn't there a barrier there?
You're thinking about the blood-brain barrier, right?
Yeah, the one that's supposed to keep things out of the brain.
Right. It's super important for protecting the brain, but it's not a completely impenetrable wall. There are certain places where it's a bit more permeable.
Permeable, like a gate that can open and close.
Exactly. And it seems that after a heart attack, that gate opens up to let those monocytes through.
Incredible. So they can actually bypass the barrier and enter the brain.
They can. The researchers were able to see this happening in the mice using special imaging. They saw the monocytes gather at that choroid plexus we talked about and then migrate into the brain tissue right into the thalamus.
Wow, so they actually witnessed the monocytes sneaking across the border.
They did. And they found evidence of the same process happening in humans who had died after a heart attack. So it's not just a mouse thing.
Okay, so the monocytes are getting into the brain, but how do we know they're actually the ones causing the increase in sleep?
Well, they did a few more experiments to figure that out. First, they blocked a molecule that monocytes need to move around.
So they essentially grounded the monocytes.
Yep. And guess what? Those mice didn't show the same increase in slow-wave sleep after a heart attack. Then, to be extra sure it was the monocytes themselves, they took monocytes from heart attack mice and injected them directly into the brains of healthy mice.
Okay, this is getting seriously high-tech.
It was. And those healthy mice, well, let's just say they got a sudden urge to nap. Their slow-wave sleep went way up within a couple hours of getting those monocytes.
Wow, so just introducing the monocytes was enough to make healthy mice sleep more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like a sleep signal in a syringe.
Mind-blowing. It's like the heart is sending a message to the brain, hey, we need some extra rest here.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've got these monocytes traveling to the brain, promoting sleep. But how do they actually do that? What's the mechanism?
That's where TNF comes back into play. Remember those brain-traveling monocytes were producing TNF?
Right, the inflammation molecule, but also capable of influencing brain activity, right?
Right. Exactly. And they discovered that TNF was acting on very specific neurons in the thalamus, the ones that have a special receptor for TNF, like a lock and key.
So the monocytes were delivering a targeted message to these specific neurons.
Bullseye. And it turns out that most of these TNF-sensitive neurons are the ones that use glutamate, that go signal we talked about earlier.
Ah, so by stimulating those neurons with TNF, the monocytes were actually reducing glutamate activity, which in turn promotes sleep.
You got it. They confirmed this by removing the gene for the TNF receptor in some mice. No receptor, no TNF action, no increase in sleep.
Like cutting the communication line.
Exactly. And they even went a step further and used gene editing to block TNF signaling in just those glutamate-using neurons in the thalamus. really pinpoint accuracy.
Wow, so they zeroed in on the exact neurons responsible for this whole sleep-inducing effect. Incredible.
It is. We've basically gone from observing that people sleep more after a heart attack to uncovering a whole new biological pathway that links the heart, the immune system, and the brain.
It's like our bodies have this hidden network working to protect us.
It really is amazing. And it highlights how much we still don't know about the incredible complexity of the human body.
Absolutely. But let's bring it back to our listeners. What does all of this mean for them?
Right, this isn't just abstract science. This research has real implications for our health.
Okay, so let's recap. What have we learned?
We've learned that after a heart attack, our bodies launched this incredible chain of events.
The monocytes, those immune system first responders, are recruited not only to the heart, but also to the brain.
They travel to a specific area in the brain, the thalamus, carrying their message, the TNF molecule.
That TNF acts on certain neurons, telling them to basically quiet down.
And this leads to more slow-wave sleep, which, as we've seen, is absolutely vital for heart recovery.
And messing with that sleep, either in mice or in humans, leads to worse outcomes for the heart.
It's like our bodies have this built-in protective mechanism, but it only works if we give it a chance to do its job. Prioritizing sleep. Not just after a heart attack, but potentially as a way to lower your risk in the first place.
So this is a major wake-up call for anyone who's been skimping on sleep. Pun intended.
Definitely. Talk to your doctor if you're having trouble sleeping, and make sure you're doing everything you can to make sleep a priority.
Things like keeping a consistent sleep schedule, having a relaxing bedtime routine, making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool.
All of those things can make a big difference in the quality of your sleep and potentially the health of your heart.
Wow, what an incredible journey into the world of heart-brain sleep connections. But hold on, there's one more fascinating aspect of this study we need to explore.
Ah, yes, this is where things get really interesting. Remember how we talked about how sleep disruption ramps up the activity of that fight or flight response?
Right, the sympathetic nervous system.
That's it. And how that leads to more stress hormones in the heart, which in turn attracts more immune cells and makes inflammation worse.
Yeah, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. Well, the researchers wanted to understand how that increased sympathetic activity was actually affecting those immune cells, those monocytes.
So beyond just attracting them to the heart, could the stress hormones actually be changing how the monocytes behave?
That's the question they wanted to answer. And what they found was truly amazing.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
They discovered that the stress hormone norepinephrine was interacting directly with a specific receptor on the surface of the monocytes, like a docking station.
So the stress hormone had a way to communicate directly with the monocyte.
Exactly. And when that stress hormone binds to that receptor, it sets off a whole cascade of signals within the monocyte.
Like flipping a switch and changing what the monocyte does.
Precisely. They found that this interaction actually changes the genes that are being expressed within the monocytes, makes them produce more of those come-hither signals that attract other immune cells.
Wait, so the stress hormones were turning the monocytes into beacons, calling in even more immune cells to the heart.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, the more immune cells you have swarming the heart, the more inflammation you have. And that can really hinder the heart's ability to heal.
So it's a double whammy. The stress hormones are attracting monocytes and making those monocytes attract even more immune cells.
Exactly. It's a recipe for a runaway inflammatory response, which really emphasizes how important it is to keep that stress response in check.
So getting enough sleep helps in two ways then. It reduces the direct stress on the heart, AND, prevents this cascade of immune cell signaling.
Exactly. And remember that thalamus, that brain area we talked about, where those sleep-inducing monocytes were gathering?
The brain's sleep control center.
That's the one. Well, the researchers found that when they messed with the communication between those monocytes and the neurons in the thalamus, not only did the mice sleep less, but they also had higher levels of norepinephrine in their hearts.
So less sleep, more stress hormones pumping through the heart.
Exactly. And to add insult to injury, it also led to more monocytes and other inflammatory cells showing up in the damaged heart tissue.
It's a vicious cycle. Less sleep, more stress hormones, more immune cells, more inflammation.
It really is. But the good news is that now that we understand the system better, we can start making changes to break the cycle.
That's right. We can focus on improving our sleep habits, managing our stress levels, all to protect our hearts.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment that promotes restful sleep and lowers stress.
This has been an amazing journey into the world of the heart-brain sleep connection. We've covered so much, but there's still so much more to explore.
There is. This research has opened up a whole new world of possibilities when it comes to understanding how our bodies heal and protect themselves.
Welcome back. Man, we've been on quite a journey today, haven't we? All these connections between the heart, the brain, and sleep.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. All this stuff happening while we sleep. And what's really amazing about this research is that it's completely changed how we think about recovering from a heart attack.
Right. I mean, we always knew sleep was important, but to think it's actually playing a key role in healing the heart.
It really is like this secret weapon we all have.
Hmm.
And it all boils down to this incredible biological process where sleep actually helps control inflammation and gets those repair mechanisms going.
And we can't forget those amazing little monocytes zipping back and forth between the heart and the brain like tiny little messengers.
What's really remarkable is how targeted this whole thing is. It's not just any monocytes, it's a specific group that gets recruited for this special job in the brain.
Right. And they're carrying their message, that TNF molecule, straight to those specific neurons in the thalamus, the ones that use glutamate. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance.
And when that dance gets interrupted, when we mess with sleep or block those signals, the consequences for the heart can be serious.
We see a weaker heart function, more inflammation, higher risk of complications. It really drives home the point that sleep isn't just a luxury. It's essential for our bodies to function properly and heal.
Absolutely. And this research could completely change how we approach cardiac care, both in terms of prevention and recovery.
Imagine, right, sleep assessments being a routine part of our checkups, or developing therapies that specifically target this heart-brain sleep connection to help people recover better after a heart attack.
Now, wouldn't that be something? And this is just the beginning. This study has opened up a whole new field of research. There's so much more to learn about how our bodies heal and protect themselves.
I'm already thinking about all the questions it raises, like, could getting enough sleep actually lower our risk of having a heart attack in the first place?
And that's $1 million question. And it's something researchers are definitely looking into. If we can prove that good sleep habits actually reduce the risk of heart disease, well, that would be a game changer.
Wow, imagine that. Adding get a good night's sleep to the list of things we know help protect our hearts, right up there with healthy eating and exercise.
It would be such a simple but powerful thing. And speaking of simple things, this research also highlights how important it is to manage stress.
Right. We talked about how sleep disruption kicks off that fight or flight response, flooding our bodies with stress hormones.
And those stress hormones not only affect the heart directly, but they also change how our immune cells behave, making them more likely to trigger inflammation.
So finding healthy ways to manage stress, things like mindfulness or exercise, could be another key to protecting our hearts.
Absolutely. It's all about setting ourselves up for restful sleep and lower stress.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling inspired to prioritize sleep after all this.
Me too. It really is a reminder that sometimes the simplest things have the biggest impact on our health.
Well, that's what the deep dive is all about, right? Uncovering those hidden gems of knowledge and helping you, our listeners, make informed decisions about your well-being. We've definitely explored some complex science today, but I think the takeaway message is pretty clear. Sleep is a superpower when it comes to heart health.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So make sure you're prioritizing those Z's. Talk to your doctor if you're having trouble sleeping, and work on building those healthy sleep habits into your routine.
Things like having a consistent sleep schedule, a relaxing bedtime routine, making sure your bedroom is nice and dark and quiet and cool, it all adds up.
And if you enjoyed today's deep dive, be sure to share it with your friends and family. Who knows, you might just inspire someone to get a little extra shut-eye tonight.
That's right. And don't forget to check out the show notes for all the links to the research and resources we talked about. Until next time, sleep well and stay curious.